December 2nd, 2025. As the world watches, Vladimir Putin delivers a message that sends shockwaves across Europe and beyond.
Vladimir Putin's words from Moscow this afternoon: if Europe wants war, Russia is ready.
In a stunning declaration just hours before meeting with Trump's envoys, the Russian president stated in no uncertain terms, if Europe wants war, or Russia is ready right now.
Что сказал. Но если Европа вдруг захочет с нами воевать и начнет, мы готовы прямо сейчас.
Speaking at Moscow's 5TB investment forum, Putin delivered what many analysts are calling one of his most direct warnings to Europe since the start of the Ukraine conflict nearly 4 years ago. Quote, "We are not planning to go to war with Europe, but if Europe wants to and starts, we are ready right now." End quote. The timing couldn't be more significant. These words came mere hours before Putin was scheduled to meet with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's closest foreign policy advisors, for high-stakes negotiations on ending the Ukraine war. Putin didn't stop there. He accused Europe of having, quote, no peaceful agenda, and claimed European leaders were actively hindering American efforts to broker peace in Ukraine. To understand the gravity of this moment, we need to look at what's been happening behind closed doors. 2 weeks ago, the world was shocked when a 28-point peace plan leaked to the media. The plan, developed by Witkoff and Kushner in close collaboration with the Kremlin, contained provisions that many saw as heavily favoring Russia. Ukraine would be required to cede territories it still controls in Donetsk. The country's military would be capped at 600,000 troops. And perhaps most controversially, Ukraine would be legally barred from ever joining NATO. The reaction from Kyiv and European capitals was swift and fierce. Ukrainian officials called it a capitulation. European leaders scrambled to draft their own counter-proposal. France, Germany, and the UK worked frantically to create an alternative framework, one that rejected territorial concessions resulting from aggression and insisted Ukraine maintain a strong army of at least 800,000 troops. As evening fell on December 2nd, the meeting finally began. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, and Jared Kushner entered the Kremlin at 1935 Moscow time. Interestingly, before the crucial meeting, the American delegation was treated to a tour of Moscow. Russian state media broadcast footage of Witkoff and Kushner strolling through Red Square's Christmas market, admiring the sights with their Russian counterpart, Kirill Dmitriev. The meeting lasted over 3 hours. This marked Witkoff's 6th visit to Russia in 2025 alone. But what actually transpired behind those closed doors? According to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, the discussion focused on the revised peace framework, a modified version of the controversial 28-point plan. The amendments reportedly incorporated Ukrainian and European input from recent talks in Geneva and Florida. Putin's declaration takes on even greater significance when viewed alongside recent intelligence assessments from Germany. Last week, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadfuhl issued a chilling warning based on new intelligence reports. Quote, "Our intelligence services are issuing urgent warnings. At the very least, Russia is creating the option for itself to wage war against NATO by 2029. End quote. This wasn't an isolated assessment. Germany's defense minister, Boris Pistorius, echoed the warning, stating that Russia could be capable of launching an attack on a NATO member as early as 2028. Lieutenant General Alexander Solfrank, head of Germany's Joint Operations Command, went even further, telling Reuters that Russia could execute a limited strike against NATO territory, quote, as early as tomorrow. Germany has responded with Operation Plan Germany, a massive 1,200-page blueprint for moving up to 800,000 NATO troops through German territory in the event of conflict. It's the largest military mobilization plan in Europe since the Cold War. Adding another layer to this diplomatic chess game, Russia released carefully timed claims about battlefield victories. On December 1st, the day before meeting the American delegation, Putin announced that Russian forces had captured Pokrovsk and Vovchansk, two strategically important Ukrainian cities. The Russian Defense Ministry released videos showing soldiers raising Russian flags in Pokrovsk's city center. State television broadcast images of Putin in military fatigues, visiting frontline command posts, being briefed by his generals. But Ukraine immediately disputed these claims. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that over the preceding 24 hours, their defenders had stopped 72 Russian assault operations in the Pokrovsk area alone. Ukrainian military sources insisted fighting continued throughout the city. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, called out the Russian claims explicitly. Quote, "All of this is done exclusively for Western audiences and to raise the stakes in diplomacy." End quote. The timing, he noted, was no coincidence, coming precisely as American negotiators arrived in Moscow. Putin's warnings to Europe weren't limited to abstract threats about future conflicts. He also made specific, immediate threats regarding the Black Sea. Recent Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian tankers in the Black Sea drew sharp condemnation from the Kremlin. Putin called these attacks, quote, piracy, and vowed to expand strikes on Ukrainian ports and any vessels entering them. More ominously, he threatened to, quote, cut Ukraine off from the sea entirely if attacks continued. And he warned that Russia would consider retaliatory measures against ships from countries assisting Ukraine in what he termed these piracy operations. This isn't just rhetoric. Russia maintains a shadow fleet of tankers that have been targeted by Ukrainian operations. The economic implications of blocking Ukraine's Black Sea access would be devastating, cutting off critical grain exports and international trade routes. While Putin met with American envoys in Moscow, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was in Dublin on his first official visit to Ireland. The contrast in messaging was stark. Zelensky struck a cautiously optimistic tone, saying he sees, quote, a chance to end this war, but stressed that significant obstacles remain. He emphasized three critical points: territory, frozen Russian assets, and security guarantees. On territory, Zelensky was clear. Ukraine will not simply hand over land that Russia failed to conquer militarily. The principle he invoked was fundamental: nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Regarding frozen Russian assets, estimated at over $300 billion held in Western banks, Zelensky argued it's, quote, high time to use these funds for Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. Irish Prime Minister Michel Martin echoed this support. But perhaps most crucial was Zelensky's emphasis on security guarantees. Ukraine has learned bitter lessons from history. In 1994, Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security assurances in the Budapest Memorandum. Russia violated that agreement in 2014 and again in 2022. This time, Ukraine insists on concrete, enforceable guarantees that will actually deter future Russian aggression. Vague promises won't suffice. So, what does Putin's declaration actually mean? Is Russia genuinely preparing for war with Europe? Or is this strategic posturing designed to influence ongoing negotiations? Most analysts lean toward strategic messaging. Putin's statement came at a precisely calculated moment, just before meeting Trump's envoys. The message was clear: Russia negotiates from a position of strength. Europe's involvement in peace talks isn't welcome, and any settlement must reflect Russia's terms. But Germany's intelligence assessment suggests there may be substance behind the bluster. Russia has been dramatically expanding its military-industrial capacity. Monthly recruitment has surged. Weapons production has increased substantially. According to German intelligence, Russia is recruiting almost one additional division every month, far more than needed just for the Ukraine conflict. These forces, German officials note, have their sights set on NATO. There's also the question of Putin's actual war aims in Ukraine. Does he genuinely seek a negotiated settlement? Or is he simply using talks to buy time, rebuild forces, and push for maximum territorial gains? His public statements offer few signs of compromise. He's insisted Ukraine must cede territory it currently controls, accept permanent limits on its military, renounce NATO membership, and essentially accept a subordinate status that undermines Ukrainian sovereignty. This moment extends far beyond the immediate question of Ukraine's future. The outcome will set precedents that reverberate globally. If Russia achieves its objectives through force and then secures them through negotiations, what message does that send? That territorial conquest works. That overwhelming military power trumps international law. That patience and persistence in warfare eventually bring rewards at the negotiating table. China watches closely, particularly regarding Taiwan. Other authoritarian regimes take notes. The post-World War II international order, built on principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, faces its greatest test since 1945. For Europe specifically, the stakes couldn't be higher. If Ukraine falls or accepts a devastating peace, where does Russian ambition stop? The Baltic states share borders with Russia. Poland remembers centuries of Russian domination. Finland and Sweden abandoned decades of neutrality to join NATO precisely because of Russian threats. Germany's intelligence warnings about 2028 or 2029 suggest these aren't distant hypotheticals. European nations are mobilizing. Defense budgets are surging. Military readiness is being reassessed across the continent. As the Moscow meeting concluded after more than 3 hours, both sides remained tight-lipped about specifics. The White House described itself as, quote, very optimistic, while acknowledging that, quote, a few delicate but not insurmountable details remain. Trump himself has stated he won't meet with either Putin or Zelensky until an agreement is complete or in its final stages. The pressure is building for a breakthrough, but significant questions remain unanswered. Will Russia accept modifications that address European and Ukrainian concerns? Can Ukraine secure meaningful security guarantees? What happens to disputed territories? How will reconstruction be funded? And perhaps most critically, what prevents Russia from simply regrouping and attacking again in 5 or 10 years? Zelensky put it bluntly in Dublin, quote, we have to stop the war in such a manner that in 1 year, Russia would not come back, end quote. That's the fundamental challenge any peace agreement must address. The coming days and weeks will be crucial. More meetings are planned. Diplomatic channels remain active. But Putin's declaration that Russia is ready for war with Europe if necessary hangs over everything. A stark reminder that while diplomacy continues, military realities shape what's possible at the negotiating table. December 2nd, 2025 may be remembered as a pivotal moment in this conflict. Putin's declaration, the Marathon Kremlin meeting, Europe's intelligence warnings, Ukraine's determined resistance. All these threads weave together into a complex tapestry of war, diplomacy, and high-stakes geopolitics. The fundamental question remains: can a peace be crafted that is just enough for Ukraine to accept, realistic enough for Europe to support, and face-saving enough for Russia to agree? Or are we watching the prologue to an even larger conflict? One thing is certain: the decisions made in the coming weeks will shape Europe's security landscape for decades. The world watches and waits.